They thought they could spring a surprise on me and watch me squirm. My sister snorted into the phone, unaware I was on hold. Dad's voice slid in, dry as old paper. She'll smile or she's out. Easy. Mom giggled, delighted. Everyone was primed to watch. A small, cold breath lodged behind my ribs. My palms chilled as if dunked in December rain. I thought of every night I'd scrub dishes while they raised glasses to others. Every time my name served as a prop instead of a person. The ache settled in my teeth until my jaw clenched. The only thing holding me together was the bite between my molars. My name is Haven Lark. I don't tell stories for belief. I tell them so people can feel them. A week before Christmas, I overheard the plan. Humiliate me in front of the whole household, then show me the door. So I altered my route. I moved with the soft economy of someone turning off a lamp. Vendors were rerouted, midnight calls made. I kept one short list for what I owed them and a longer ledger for what they owed me. On December 24th, Mom called, syrup in her voice. "Where are you?" she asked. I answered with a laugh, soft and flat. "Don't wait up for me. And don't wait on the catering." In the kitchen, the clock clicked like tiny hammers. Outside, chimneys puffed smoke, and the air smelled faintly of tangerines. I opened the window and let the cold climb in. It steadied me in a way nothing inside that house ever did. You can measure a life in what you'll swallow. I was done swallowing. They'd built themselves a stage, strings of warm bulbs, glossy place cards, a microphone that would crackle at the punchline. They'd planned a roast masquerading as affection and a shove masked as boundaries. They forgot one detail. The girl who fetched napkins also kept the invoices. I set my phone down, pressed 2 fingers to my wrist, counted the beats. Control is a quiet drum. Another call, Dad, which I declined. A text from my aunt, bring the cranberry tart at least. I smiled, small and private. The tart had already been delivered to the shelter down the street, along with the trays labeled with names: salmon, Lee table, roast, head table. Every labeled kindness redirected where it mattered. Snow began to fall in a hush that swallowed sound. For the first time in years, I heard my own voice. I zipped my coat and took an unmarked envelope from the pocket. The night cut at my face with clean edges. The air was crisp and honest compared to the stale warmth of their home. I walked quickly through soft snow, the envelope warm against my palm like a live ember. Inside were receipts, photocopies of every bill, every catering deposit, every penny I'd poured into their so-called family Christmas. I carried proof the way you carry a match before you strike it. Through frost-tipped pines, I could see their house lit up like a stage set. Cars lined the driveway, exhaust curling away, muffling the laughter. I paused and listened. My sister's voice rang bright and rehearsed. She's always late. Wait until you hear what we've got planned. Laughter spilled out. I let it wash over me, then folded it into steel. I approached the side entrance, the service door where I'd once carried trays in and out, invisible. The key still worked. Of course it did. No one ever thought to change the lock for the girl they assumed would stay obedient forever. I slipped inside, swallowed by warm air scented with cinnamon and wax. My heart kept time with the clink of glasses. The dining room was a glossy spread, polished silver, wrapped gifts piled high beneath the tree. My family glittered in reds and golds. Mom lifted a glass to hush the room. "When she arrives, we'll toast," she said. That same smile she'd used to slice me down since I was 10. I rested a shoulder against the doorway and watched them for a beat, unseen. They'd rehearsed their cruelty like choreography. This was when I realized I didn't have to shout to be heard. I only needed to let their stage collapse under its own weight. I tightened my grip on the envelope and stepped forward. The floorboard creaked under my boot. Heads turned as one. My sister's smirk froze mid-gesture. Silence fell, sudden and brittle, like the hush before a chandelier crashes. Every eye fixed on me, waiting. I let the silence fill the room, careful not to hurry. I held it long enough that someone shifted in their seat, uncomfortable under the weight of it. My sister was the first to break that stillness, her tone high, all smug certainty. "Well, look who finally showed up," she sneered. "Don't worry, everyone. We saved the best joke for last." A few cousins forced nervous laughs, waiting for the cue to join in. But the way I stood, coat still on, snow beating at my boots, kept them from going all the way. I tilted my head. Funny, I said softly. That's exactly what I came to say. My father's brow pulled tight. What do you mean? He demanded, trying to sound in control. I noticed the tiny tremor at the edge of his jaw. I set an envelope down and slid it across the polished table until it stopped beside my mother's champagne glass. Every catering bill, every deposit, my money, not yours. I kept the receipts. Tonight's banquet has already been served somewhere else. I let those facts land. A ripple moved through the guests. My mother's hand shook as she tugged the papers halfway out. People leaned toward one another, whispering, then making shocked noises. My sister's laugh faltered. You're bluffing, she said. She's bluffing. But the figures and signatures on those pages were plain as daylight. The room didn't need my words. Their silence said enough as realization spread like spilled wine. I stepped forward so the glow from the tree lit half my face and the rest fell into shadow. You wanted a stage, I told them. You built one. I let my eyes travel the table, then added quietly, but the joke's on you. A cousin cleared his throat, another fidgeted. The center of power at that table, the place it had always sat, seemed to slip sideways. Then the doorbell rang, sharp and impossible to ignore. Heads snapped toward it like birds. For a beat, they all looked relieved, as if a late arrival might break the tension. I already knew who waited outside. The bell chimed again, louder, impatient. My sister hissed, someone get that. A cousin scuffled over, shoes whispering on the floorboards. The door opened, letting in a gust of December air and 3 men in long dark coats carrying boxes stamped with a logo none of us recognized. Delivery for the Lark family. One of them announced, their voices even and practiced. Confusion crashed through the room. We didn't order anything, my father barked, standing, trying to seize back control. One man placed a box squarely in the middle of the table, right on top of my mother's poinsettias and the glowing candles. This is prepaid, the man said. Signed by Haven Lark. All eyes swung to me. I did not flinch. I removed my gloves slowly, one finger at a time, letting the quiet stretch taut. My mother's voice cracked, small and helpless. What is this? Your Christmas present, she asked. I tapped the box. What you thought you owned has been rerouted. I tapped again for emphasis. These are care packages. Tonight, the shelters will dine like guests. Gasps tangled around the room. My aunt pressed a hand to her mouth. Somebody muttered about the salmon. My sister's face flushed, then went ashen. My father slammed his fist on the table. The clatter of glass sounded louder than the bell. Ungrateful child, he spat. Not ungrateful, I said, my voice cold and precise. Ignored. Unpaid. Only wanted when you needed someone to pick up the slack. I let my gaze sweep the guests. Curiosity curdled into awkwardness. The men in coats tipped their hats and left. Snow spun in through the open door. Then the click of it shutting sounded like finality. Silence fell heavy again. The candles had been crushed by the boxes. The room smelled faintly of singed wax. My family stared at the sealed packages like they were lids over secrets. I let the moment breathe, feeling the pressure of truth settle in. From my pocket, I drew one small folded card, something none of them had seen, and laid it face down in front of my sister. Her fingers hovered. The woman who tore into gifts like they were trophies now looked as if contact might burn her. Voices hushed. People leaned forward, hungry for the reveal. She opened the card. Color drained from her cheeks. This isn't real, she whispered. Oh, it's real, I replied, steady as a metronome. Every bill in your name that I let slide while you played Queen? Gone. I closed the accounts. I canceled the cards. I let the words come slowly, like ice melting. I'm done footing the bills for a family that treats me like an invisible servant, present only when you want something. The room shifted under the force of it. Guests who'd come for gossip had nowhere to hide. My sister stared at me as if seeing me for the first time, unsure whether to scream or faint. My parents' practiced composure cracked into jagged edges. The power that used to sit in the center of that table had slipped from their hands, And for the first time, they had to look at the consequences of how they treated me. I straightened my coat, the snow on my boots beginning to drip. Eat, I said, nodding toward the boxes. Share it. My voice was low but carried. And next time you build a stage to make someone small, remember someone else can change the script. Nobody answered. The house seemed to listen. Outside, snow fell in even, silent sheets. Inside, the candles smoldered, the boxes waited, and my family sat with the quiet I'd brought, a silence that didn't demand anything. It only showed them what had always been there, if they'd ever cared to see. The noise swelled. An uncle squinted from the table at the paper, then at my sister. Wait, this wedding fund's empty. Her throat worked. She tried to force a laugh that broke into nothing. She's bluffing. She's jealous, someone said. I shook my head. Check your phone. Swipe tomorrow. Or call the florist. They called me this morning. Her hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone. The screen's glow washed over her face. When she saw it, her mouth fell open in a small, stunned sound. Eyes around the room widened. She wasn't bluffing. I wasn't. My mother clutched my father's arm, panic sharp in her voice. You let her. No, I stepped forward. My boots clicked on the floor. You made me. Years of being shoved into a corner. Years of pretending crumbs were enough. Tonight was supposed to humiliate me. I only gave you back what you handed me. The atmosphere shifted. Guests who'd come for spectacle sat rigid. Some looked at me with something closer to respect than pity. My sister's phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. The sound cracked through the hush. I leaned in just enough to say Merry Christmas. Then I headed for the stairs. My next move wasn't at the table. It was upstairs. Each stair groaned under my weight, louder than the last. Voices rose behind me, Mom calling, Dad demanding I come back down, but none followed. Pride or fear rooted them in place. The hallway smelled of pine and old polish. Family photos lined the walls, smiling in matching sweaters like a carefully staged lie. At the end of the hall was my old room. The door still bore the pale lavender I'd picked at 12. I pushed it open. Everything inside had been frozen in time. Trophies, dog-eared books, the cracked snow globe I made them let me keep. But tucked where no one bothered to look, under the bed, was a small lockbox. The key turned easily. Inside were papers, not bills this time, but ownership documents and shares in the family company. I'd been buying them quietly, year by year, with money they never noticed. While they mocked me as the outsider, I'd been becoming the silent partner they overlooked. I traced the embossed seal and felt steadiness settle in my chest. Downstairs laughter had gone brittle, then anxious. They thought the damage ended at dinner. They had no idea the foundation was already mine. Steps sounded below, light and hesitant, my sister's voice, trembling. Haven, what are you doing up there? I slid the documents into my coat and stepped back into the hall. The tree lights downstairs cast distorted shadows on the wall. I'm taking what was always mine. I called down, my voice calm, almost gentle. Just a pause. Her whisper floated up, edged with disbelief. You can't. You wouldn't. She'd always known I was quieter, but not weaker. I descended slowly. The weight of the papers heavy against my ribs, my last card. By the time I reached the bottom, the living room had shifted. The laughter had vanished, replaced by that restless, coiled silence people keep when the story isn't unfolding the way they planned. My parents stood at the center, small and stunned, their practiced authority unraveling like brittle crowns. The room hummed with polite conversation until I moved. My sister lingered near the table, drained of color, her eyes fixed on the bulge in my coat as if she could already read the papers inside. I stepped forward deliberately, not hurried, letting everyone watch. The twinkle lights on the tree made soft halos on the walls, but all the festive warmth had gone thin. Dad's voice tried to anchor the moment. This is family business, Haven. You don't flaunt it in front of guests. I let his words fall where they would. Exactly, I said. Family business. Then, slow and sure, I slid the documents from my pocket and spread them right on top of the unopened box. I own more of this than you ever noticed. A collective intake of breath rose like a tide. Someone rose to see better. My mother's fingers tightened around her necklace until the gold bit white into her knuckles. And Aunt leaned forward, whispering, "Shaz, is that true?" He crawled up my father's face. "Those are forged," he spat, voice brittle. "They're notarized," I cut in. "Every single share accounted for. While you mocked me, I invested. While you schemed to push me out, I was already inside." My sister's voice broke. "Why?" she asked raw. "Why would you do this?" I looked at her, not with hatred, but with something sharper, quieter. "Because you never saw me," I wanted to tell her. "You only saw what I could serve." Tonight was meant to be my humiliation. Instead, it became a mirror held up to them. The room sank into a hush so complete you could hear someone in the corner shuffle their feet, as if even movement would shatter the fragile truth. A few guests shifted toward the door, suddenly aware that leaving could spare them the discomfort of watching a family unspool. I slid the papers into my mother's untouched cranberry glass, then leaned back as if closing a book. "Merry Christmas," I whispered again, this time with the finality of someone closing a chapter. I turned toward the door, my boots crossing the threshold into the cold that smelled of pine and something else. Release. For a moment, the house seemed to cling to me, voices riffling like trapped birds, the last tendrils of warmth trying to follow, but it wasn't mine. It never had been. Snow curled in at my ankles, a hush that both stung and soothed. Behind me, their voices rose, urgent, raw. "Haven, wait," my mother called, voice strained to hold calm. My father barked something about regret, pride cracking off the words. My sister's plea came out small, fragile. "Please don't leave it like this." I paused with one hand on the frame, feeling steadier than I had any right to. For the first time, their words slid off me. They were noise, they didn't land. I turned far enough to let them see my face, to let the shock register. Their polished family tableau, all smiles and practiced lines, fractured into something harder. Shock, fear, disbelief. I didn't lock the house down or torch its memory. I told them, softly. I just stopped holding it up. The silence that followed was heavy as packed snow. Some guests stayed seated, eyes wet, nodding like people who'd finally understood something painful. Others couldn't meet my gaze, ashamed they had laughed when cruelty had been dressed up as entertainment. The door closed behind me with a meaningfully heavy click. Outside, the world was clean, streetlights haloed through falling flakes, the air crisp enough to clear the head. The documents warmed against my side, not with the heat of revenge, but the steady warmth of reclamation. They had wanted to write my story as humiliation. Instead, I stepped away holding the pen. I walked. The snow gathered in fresh prints that no one could rewrite. I didn't want applause or vindication. The quiet of the night was reward enough. With every step, the weight of inherited narratives lightened. Bells tolled from the church. Midnight, the calendar flipping to Christmas in the old way, and each peal felt like a small unburdening. Not their Christmas, I thought. Mine. The air, sharp and honest, seemed to whisper it back. I kept going until the house was a small, lit shape behind me, and then it was only the sound of my boots and the soft, steady fall of snow. The cold didn't bite, it purified. The papers in my pocket weren't the end of them. They were proof that I could stop playing the role they'd cast for me. I had walked away without breaking, and the fact of it, simple, unadorned, felt like freedom.